All right, so first of all, Sam, it's really good to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us once
Absolutely.
again. So since we last talked, we've had Overwatch League launch and everything, and I'm just curious how that's affected both StarCraft viewership and Heroes viewership.
Honestly, it hasn't really impacted it at all. The success of one game or like the viewership of one doesn't usually conflict with the other. Especially Overwatch kind of has its own player base that's separate from Heroes and StarCraft. We don't share a lot of the same players, but the excitement's there. Like I think the biggest impact that the Overwatch League has had is just an overall interest from sponsors, from fans, from team owners, being invested into the Blizzard esports ecosystem. It's done a really good job at kind of bridging that gap and bringing new people in. And that gives us the opportunity on Heroes and StarCraft to work with them.
So there's been a noted drop in NA viewership, though, that some attribute to Overwatch League, some attribute to a lack, rather, of NA LAN events and EU stream times. So, and some believe it's a mix of these factors. What do you believe can be done to kind of remedy this and hype up NA for Heroes more?
Totally. So that's one of those things that we're going to be evaluating as well. We've definitely noticed it. And so I think we're looking at a couple different solutions. One is format, one is timing. But in general, those are kind of like the two major things. I don't think we're going to be making any changes this year, but it's something that we're actively looking at to change next year.
So many esports, just kind of across the world, have differing viabilities as far as being a career for new gamers. Some require you to win big tournaments to make a living versus games with regular leagues such as HGC and Overwatch League that have like franchising and other such things that make it a viable career. Since Blizzard as a company fields multiple esports styles with various models, has there been a company-wide discussion on standardizing its esports player contract protections, etc., in order to solidify Blizzard esports as a viable career option?
I think that yes and no. So like one of the things that we do look at is like player contracts, player agreements, rules, and standardizing those. But when it comes to payments, formats, it's done by a case-by-case basis. Ultimately, what we're there to do is to service the game teams and to provide a service for the fans and the community. So ultimately, it's more important that we work together with our game teams to provide the service that they want. So with Heroes of the Storm, there's a certain demand of what the game team wants, how their esports is represented, different than what Overwatch League wants or different than what StarCraft wants. And so I don't see there ever being a world where all of our esports programs are run the same on a franchise per franchise basis. I don't think any of us actually would want that. It kind of takes away the identity of what each of our games are. Like StarCraft is a great format that follows that mostly like golf or tennis, compared to Overwatch League and HGC following that more of like football or basketball. And so I think that we enjoy the separation, and it's something that we have no interest in changing right now.
Gotcha. So I understand that various games have various needs, but just a little bit more on that topic. As far as young player protections, there's obviously with any new industry, there's always the threat of people taking advantage of young, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed players and stuff. And we've seen some of those protections come through within Blizzard. So we're just curious if there's an interest in furthering that, if that specifically is being looked at in the player contract phase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, HGC took several strides in protecting the players, and that's one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for as an ex-professional player. So many times I've competed and not been paid, or have been signed with a team and not been paid. What we're doing to protect that and also to ensure the stability among the newcomers is that every single team in the HGC is guaranteed $100,000. It doesn't matter if you get first place or last place, you're guaranteed a certain amount of money, which gives you that cushion to be able to feel safe and secure. Another thing that we do is that we pay the players out directly. We make sure that we work with them to make sure that they're taken care of. We work with them to help promote their streams. We had a summit recently where we equip them on how to be a streamer, how to build your audience, how to build a brand, and we work with them to promote them inside of the game, on our Battle.net launcher. And so we're very much advocates of protecting the players and making sure that they're taken care of first. It's our number one priority, is making sure that the players are protected and that they're able to compete and make this a living.
So something else that's being talked about a lot on Reddit is how Overwatch League kind of changed the game with the esports tab in the launcher and stuff. And a lot of people have been crying out for something similar with HGC, just to be able to have that information readily on hand within the Blizzard launcher. Is that something that's a possibility for the future, something that's being looked at?
It is something that will not happen for HGC, nor will it happen for any other game outside of what Overwatch League is doing. The reality of the situation is that there's just not enough bandwidth to be able to kind of support all of it. It's not just a conversation about HGC. A lot of people are like, oh, well, why isn't HGC there? But we have to take a step back and say, why isn't WCS, HCT, the WoW Arena, Mythical Dungeon? Like, there's so many different esports programs that we have going on. So my answer to that is we're exploring the options of generic Blizzard esports that can cover all of these franchises franchises, but don't hold your breath for an HGC specific one.
So another thing we talked about last time was HGC trying to reach out and give educational or instructive content to help breach that barrier of macro play that's required at the competitive level. StarCraft being kind of the old guard of esports and kind of the founder, Koreans Brood War being like the founding game of esports as we know it. Yeah. It has a lot to live up to and also a very high skill barrier of entry. So we're curious if there's going to be that same kind of fan engagement going forward educationally to help people enter into StarCraft and excite more interest in playing.
Yeah. So we do not have anything planned right now, but the conversations just got started around it. And the reason why those conversations got started is that StarCraft recently went free to play, and we're starting to see this huge influx of players coming in that have never played StarCraft before, haven't played since Wings of Liberty, for example. And so there's this need now for an onboarding that maybe wasn't there before because StarCraft does a very good job at retaining the players that it has, but it hasn't always been doing the best at bringing in new players constantly because it's such a difficult game to play and master. And so now that we have these new influx of free-to-play players, one of the main goals that we're trying to think of on esports is how do we capitalize on that and how do we turn those new players into esports viewers? And a lot of that comes with the onboarding, teaching them what is professional StarCraft, how do you get involved in it, and what makes somebody great at StarCraft? What are the little things that they do that you learn to appreciate that you might not do right now? And so while we don't have any plans right now, we will soon, and it's something that we want to do this year. But it's just the reason why it kind of sparked all of this is that WCS Leipzig just happened. We had the best viewership out of any event in all of 2017 for our kickoff event. And so obviously the free-to-play and the new players coming in are starting to breach into that esports department and starting to increase our viewership. And we want to make sure that we're giving the tools to the community to make sure that they're constantly getting better at the game. And so we're working on it.
Excellent.
Working on it.
So compared to Brood War, last question by the way, compared to Brood War, StarCraft 2 has had a lot more in the ways of expansions and character updates and patches and all that stuff. With this new influx of players and with this renewed interest in the game StarCraft 2, what are the goals to help keep the game constantly living and breathing and relevant, going into X amount of years after its release?
Yeah, so I think we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with our balancing, making sure that we're putting out constant updates to make sure that the game stays fresh, like you said. But I think one of the things that separates StarCraft from other games is that it doesn't have all this new content coming in. It's kind of it's a safe game to be able to go professionally in because it's static. You don't have all these new characters being added, new units adding that you need to kind of learn. Instead, it's people mastering their craft and really honing it to a skill that we've never seen. And so for us, what we're really looking at is things like War Chest, expanding upon the Warcraft universe and lore by integrating it into our actual esports. Cosmetics and skins and packs that delve deeper into the actual esports integrations. So War Chest has been a big success for us, and I think continuing to look at those types of avenues is the future of like the StarCraft content pipeline. I know that as a game, esports is now the main priority now that we've pushed out all the expansions and free to play.
Excellent. Hey, any final words for the HGC or StarCraft 2 communities?
Yeah, so specifically for StarCraft, like now is the perfect time to start getting invested into the scene. We're starting to see some crazy upsets. The gap between the Western world and Korea has never been smaller. Cyril just took out a great opponent, and he's moving on to the semifinals. Scarlet won IEM Pyeongchang. She's now in the GSL top 8. So there's a lot of really good matches going on right now. The game is free to check out, definitely worth jumping into. One of the things that I always hear from people is that they're intimidated to jump into StarCraft because they feel like it's too late. Like the game's been going on for so long, it's hard to follow. That's not true. The game is now free to play. You could easily jump in, learn. We have a ton of content that's coming out for you to be able to watch and catch up. And there is never a more exciting time to follow the esports. A lot of the, to quote Artosis and Tasteless and them, we're seeing some of the best StarCraft we've ever seen right now. And so if you want to watch some exciting esports action, that's the way to go.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Absolutely, man.